Welcome to Costly Conversations. I'm super excited because we have my guy, Chris, on the line. What's going on, Chris?
What's going on, brother? How you doing?
Doing pretty good, pretty good. Quick matter of housekeeping. We do want to just remind everybody to check out the Patreon. It's the best way to connect with me and all my friends as we get together, continue to have costly conversations out of the normal podcast setting and in a private community, as well as having awesome guests pop in and out, friends of mine, past guests on the show, and other people will pop in and just kind of continue to have costly conversations with us. So tap into that. It's a great place to be. And you can support the show with as little as a $3 donation on a monthly basis. Or, hey, you want to support in a different way? Hit me up at the Instagram, and I'll tell you how you can do that. In addition to that, we are doing t-shirts, so check those out. There should be links down below on how you can rep the brand and, support your favorite podcast. So without further ado, Chris, what's going on, brother?
Not much, man. Hanging in there. Just, another day in paradise.
Another day in paradise. Hey, well, you know what? Paradise is not always fun. I know you are doing all sorts of stuff. You're doing training. I know you do some. Let's talk about who are you and what do you do? Because people have no idea unless they know.
So I'm Chris, owner of FTAC. I have my own outdoor gun range, just private range out in Central Florida. What I do is just firearms training, civilians and law enforcement, educating the community specifically on deadly force, and then just things regarding firearms safety. And that's pretty much it. Just recently started transitioning into being a witness as far as use of force. So working cases. So that's a new area that I'm transitioning into.
Okay. Now, I understand what that is, but for the general layperson, maybe they'd like a little bit more background on what being a witness is in a professional sense.
So an expert witness is someone that, if you were involved in a use of force situation, someone that your attorney or your team would hire to come in and analyze, look at the facts, look at the reports, and then to give their professional opinion as far as if what you did was right or wrong.
Okay.
In layman's terms.
Fair enough. Now, actually, with the concealed carry insurance that I have, that's actually a little box you can check where for $2 more a year, you can basically have them, if something were to happen, call upon an expert witness to come in and assist you in your case, which
correct.
I suppose you'd hope that they would be able to do that regardless if you paid for the feature or not, but I guess it's an extra perk.
Yeah, I think each of those carriers that provide that type of service, they had, they box it up differently. Like some people it's included, others, like, I guess whoever you have to pay additional for that. Yeah,
I do. And I feel like it's a decent rate. It was like $200 a year to have a little bit of peace of mind that if something crazy were to go down, they would at least try to help me out with some of that, the legal fees and some of that other stuff, and maybe have somebody to talk to.
It will be very costly.
Well, no pun intended. Huh? And hopefully not. That's people say that the day you have to use your firearm is probably one of the worst days of your life. And I know you've personally been through a couple different situations where you've had to deal with stuff.
Correct.
I know some of that stuff you just really can't talk about due to ongoing things, but what can you talk about?
So I can definitely say that anytime you have to use deadly force on another human, it is going to be very traumatic and extremely stressful. Number one, that's the last thing that we want to do, right? But in the heat of the moment, we have to preserve our life, right? We have to defend ourselves. So that's an act that you must take in order to ensure that you survive. Then from there, what a lot of people don't realize is the post incident, which is what's really stressful. You have the criminal investigation and or civil litigation that's going to occur. So all of that can be very stressful. In your mind, you did the right thing, but now you have detectives that are looking at the case to try to justify your actions or not justify your actions. Then it goes up to the state attorney's office to review everything, and then they make the decision, right? All right, yep, this was a good shoot, or no, it was a bad shoot. even if you did everything right, you still can get charged. And then now you have to go through the criminal process, which adds more stress. And then at some point, civil is going to come because unfortunately, everyone tends to sue.
Yeah. I mean, now my question has always been, because you see high profile cases, but you also see like little cases, or when I say little, not high profile cases where somebody either gets hurt or somebody gets a finger broken because they got tackled by the police, or somebody breaks into a homeowner's home, their dwelling, and something happens. The homeowner defends the property, defends their life, defends their family, and then the parents of the intruder, the bad guy, they're upset, they're distraught, they have to bury their kid, or the family is left, or whatever the situation is, and then there's a lawsuit. Why would there be a lawsuit?
Because in the reality, in the United States, you have that right to sue, right? People typically they're sued for excessive force. Mm-hmm. That's the thing. So if you use force against someone, an intruder, and unfortunately, they end up losing their life, you did everything right. Your actions were justified. Obviously, the family's not going to feel that way, right? Because there's an emotional connection. Rightfully so. They lost a loved one. And in response to that, they're going to go after you civilly. And the goal is, obviously, if they're going after you civilly, it is to recuperate some sort of financial means, right? It's to get money. And then, so it's going to be up to the jury and your attorneys to try to prevent that from happening.
Yeah. That's a precarious situation. And I know this is maybe an interesting line of questions, but I do understand that. Okay. Say the person was, if not innocent, it was a gray area situation. Somebody got killed, somebody got hurt, and then the family's like, well, he was the breadwinner. He was bringing in so much a year.
Correct.
We need compensation because you've taken the sole breadwinner from the home, or something of the line, or you wrongfully killed this man. Can you put a price on a human life, even outside of their net worth and ability to gain wealth?
I don't think you could ever put a price on someone's life. That person is no longer here with us.
Right.
They don't have the ability to create memories with their loved ones. Right. Things that we can enjoy. Me personally, I don't think there's a price that you can put on the value of a life. But hindsight, as far as civil litigation, that's what essentially they end up doing. They formulate whatever they formulate a particular number, and then that's the number that they're going after in civil litigation.
Okay. Yeah, no, it's really interesting because that is a concern in any self-defense situation. And that's a big selling point for like self-defense insurance and whatnot. And they're like, hey, listen, you might get off in it as innocent. They might not charge you or anything like that, but the civil litigation is what you got to worry about, and we'll be there as well, provided that you were not in the wrong per se. So I do think that's really interesting, and I'm glad that I have that protection personally. I know there's others who choose not to have it,
and you never know when something's going to happen. And I tell people this: if you own a firearm, it is a high liability, right? So you need to protect yourself. We have vehicles. Vehicles are high liabilities. We have insurance on those vehicles. Homes, we have insurance on that, right? So if you own a firearm, it's just common sense practice to have that particular insurance or protection plan to not only protect you, but your loved ones. You do not need to be a millionaire to be sued for $1 million and win. It will garnish 35% of your wages for the rest of your life. They will garnish any type of assets that you have, right? So,
wow, that's horrifying. Just the idea of, for the rest of my life, until they get until they get their pound of flesh, they're gonna take it and make sure that it goes to somebody else. And obviously, if I was in the wrong, there are consequences for being wrong in life. You can't always get off with a, oh, sorry, my bad. Like my bad doesn't generally cut it when it comes to matters of life and death in the legal system. So that I do get that. And speaking of the legal system, self-defense insurance, things like that, there have been several legislative things that have been put forth, and usually it's packaged in this big, Christmas box of gun control, and it usually says like we're going to limit magazine capacity to 10, which I'm like, well, I mean 10, I mean. I barely get by with 30. So like, what are you talking about? You've never been to the shooting range? Clearly never been. And then they're like, well, and also we want to mandate that every single person has to have the self-defense liability insurance, which personally I'm like, go get it. But when you package it into the boxes of gun control, I'm just like, I can't support that. I highly encourage people to do it. And then people will say, well, when you have a car, you have to have it. It's mandated. I wish it wasn't mandated. But then again, I'm glad that it is, because I've been in a few accidents. Yeah.
And then that insurance comes in play.
It really handy. Does. And be careful, because if you say the wrong thing, the internet's going to crucify you, especially in the gun control, or not gun control, in the 2A community. And there's no right answer. But how do you feel when you see that section brought in, where it's like, hey, we want to make sure everybody has, and if you own a firearm, there's some sort of liability insurance to go with it?
I don't agree with mandating the liability insurance. Mm-hmm. I think it's if you're a responsible, educated gun owner, you see the benefits to having that, right? But also, to your right, if you choose not to have it, I get that. Me personally, I wouldn't do that. Like, I'm going to carry, because you never know what can happen. And again, you can do everything right, still be looked at wrong, right? So it's better be safe than sorry.
Listen, you're absolutely right. I just put a post up the other day. It was stories from my Instagram. If you guys aren't following me on Instagram, armed_atlas. And of course, check out my guy over here at
FTAC.training.
FTAC.training. Good page. Always something interesting on there. Always some training.
Likewise, brother. Thank you.
I appreciate that as well. And that said, the other day I posted in my stories, there's this picture floating around the internet of these two young people going to prom. And they had firearms, and one of them was pointing it in what is considered a safe direction. The other one was pointing it right at the camera. And it is presumed, I can assume, just because of how things were, that there was somebody holding a cell phone camera, taking the picture as the young man was pointing the gun straight at the camera, and therefore the cameraman breaking clearly one of the very, very important safety rules. Never point a firearm, loaded or unloaded, at anything that you are unwilling to destroy.
Correct.
And for those who are like, well, we made sure it wasn't loaded, and I've seen that on the internet, and it makes me want to like pull my hair out, the little hair that I have. And I'm like, golly, no, like, listen, just today I saw a picture of somebody who blew their hand open with a hollow point because they had just went to rack the slide, and their hand was just barely covering the muzzle. And they said their finger was off of the trigger. Their finger was probably on the trigger, unless something was actually wrong with the gun, where it was physically broken. And even still, I highly doubt that all the internal safeties would allow it.
Correct. What people don't realize too, most of these negligent situations, it is negligent. That person violated one or more of the firearm safety rules. The truly accidental discharges, that's typically about 10%. 90% is negligent. So
right. And I think those numbers that you're giving are maybe a little bit generous, because other than there's very few situations where a gun was dropped and it didn't have a drop safety and a firearm went off. And that's something people should be aware of is, does this firearm have a drop safety? You shouldn't be dropping guns to begin with. And, you see silly stuff where people are throwing their guns at the range. Don't do that. Like, come on. Like, I know that that's funny, but like, don't do that.
Yeah, because the saying, monkey see, monkey do, right?
Right.
Someone who may not be knowledgeable, they see that and think that's cool, and then they go out and do it, and they may not get the same end result. Right. It may lead to a negligent discharge. Mm-hmm. Now we have great bodily harm or unfortunately death, and now criminal charges.
Mm-hmm. And here's the crazy thing, man. Like, oftentimes people get away with stuff and it looks like, oh, this is a thing you can do. Well, and I have to just straight up say, no, you're getting away with something. Like, oh, I saw this guy, he was reholstering his gun, and in the process, he turned the gun kind of towards him and put it in. Or even better, there was a situation where a young man, he runs this kind of like premium Gucci body armor company, and to test out his new body armor that he just developed, he turned a gun towards himself, towards his gut.
I just commented on that. It's commented horrifying.
On that. It's truly horrifying. And I've people that I thought I respected, and I probably still do, and it's a momentary lapse of judgment on their end, are commenting, yeah, man, go, bro. Don't listen to the haters. Bro, no. Do not point a gun at yourself. There are better ways to test our body armor.
Correct. We have mannequins. We have dummies. We have to understand that we have to do things in accordance to proper education to make sure that we don't do anything that can possibly lead to great bodily harm or death, right? I'm always going to go back to this saying. My mom used to say this to me, monkey see, monkey do. People are going to think that's cool. Someone's going to do that, and they're going to have a little bit of recoil anticipation, and their result is not going to be the same. They're going to put a round or two inside their pelvic area. Mm-hmm. I'm like, if we're educators, we need to be educators. We're not comedians. We're not entertainers. If that's what you want to do, then do that. But if we are educators, our goal is to educate. Right. That means we need to hold people accountable. We need to teach them the right way.
And I don't think that you're saying that the education can't be entertaining. I don't think you're saying that.
No, that's not what I'm saying. There are some people, so the education can be entertaining, right? Because just like when I teach my classes and the other instructors that I know, we add some form of entertainment, make people laugh, make them feel comfortable. But they also know that this is serious, mm-hmm. and we have guidelines and we have rules that we always have to follow. So you can make it entertaining, but we can't break these rules.
Right. No, it's, man, I went on Facebook one day, and for some reason Facebook was feeding me gun content, and there was this guy who he was kind of hood, and he was going around, he was in Walmart, had the gun in his pants, and I have a personal prejudice. It's a very strong prejudice against anyone who carries a handgun with a magazine that sticks out an additional not 3 but 5, 6, 10 inches. This thing is like hanging all the way out. I'm like, bro, conceal that.
Me too.
Conceal that. And I know that, like, I'm gonna get some hate for that because that's traditionally kind of like a hood look, and I don't want it to be seen as me hating against hood dudes. But there are certain, you can be as hood as you want and also safely and responsibly carry a firearm.
Correct.
Like,
you can do both.
You can walk and chew gum. You can do both, man.
Correct. I'm the same way too. I've seen people do that. My bigger pet peeve is people who carry concealed without a holster.
Oh,
like that.
No, that's dangerous.
Is like, and unfortunately, I see that a lot, right? Some of the hood guys, that's what they do too. Like, and I would tell my bro, man, just get a holster. Like, protect your stuff. Get a holster. Like, go spend the $20, $30, get a good holster and carry.
Right. And I get it. Like, I know some of this more expensive stuff is, $140. It can get up there for like a real premium handcrafted thing. You can get a nice little cheap holster for $50 and under that does everything you need it to do.
Correct.
Everything.
It's about choices, right? And again, that's why I say education is so important. A lot of people have their own vices, right? Some people like to drink. Some people like to buy watches, buy sneakers. but you're buying this tool for what? For self-protection, right? Invest in your tool, right? Don't cut yourself short. Don't sell yourself short.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you get a gun, good. Now get a good quality holster. You don't have to get the top tier one, but get something that gets the job done while keeping you safe.
Yeah. And I should add, and this is super important to me, and I'm sure you care about this tremendously, just being the guy that you are. As you're keeping yourself safe by getting a good, quality holster, making sure that it's not going to just, catch on a piece of zipper and go off and hurt you or somebody else. Also, invest in some sort of device to keep it contained when it's not on your person.
Correct.
Because sometimes you're just not going to have it on you. Maybe you have more than one, you don't carry them all at the same time. Keep that thing locked up.
Always.
Get there are little gun chains. Put it on. I know it's a hassle.
It is, but you have to do it. Like I'm in Florida, right? So one of the leading causes of deaths for youth in my state is firearms, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times it's negligence,
mm-hmm.
firearms that are not secured, right? Unfortunately, Florida has made the news recently, over the last year or two, for several unfortunate deaths that have occurred with kids gaining access to a firearm as young as 2 years old, finding mommy's gun in the purse, right? Finding dad's gun underneath the pillow or in the couch, or just the gun being left on the table, and people thinking that the kids don't have the ability to initiate the cycle of operation. And so
right. And people make up excuses in their head, and like, if I'm offending you with this, I'm sorry, but maybe you do need to hear this. People is like, oh well, there's nothing. It's not loaded. It's not chambered. Yeah, there's a magazine in it, but there's nothing in the head. Like that doesn't matter.
Yeah, doesn't.
It doesn't matter because you might have forgotten.
Correct.
People forget all the time. That's why when someone hands you a gun, you should rack it and check it yourself.
Always
in addition
sure.
to that,
Yep.
keeping it in a safe direction, all the different firearms rules, because people miss stuff. You're busy. You're a busy guy. You're a busy girl. Like you don't have the bandwidth to do everything perfectly. And even still, a kid with just enough muscle strength, just enough dexterity might make it happen. You never know.
Definitely. And we've seen it. We've seen it as young as in Florida,
2 or 3 year olds,
2 years old. We had a case that it was all over the United States. 21-year-old mother about 6 months ago was killed. She was on a Zoom call with her coworkers. Her 2-year-old son picks up dad's gun that was in a backpack, and he pressed the trigger. Unfortunately, shot her in the back of the head, and yeah,
that was it.
That was it. And then dad ends up getting charged 3 months later.
Wow.
So
there's consequences. Like, not only do you lose a loved one, but now potentially you could go to jail for maybe the rest of your life, depending on how old you are.
And he was only 21 years old.
Jeez, like, why are you spending 30 years in jail? Like, does that make sense? And I don't know the actual sentencing guidelines or dates or whatever, but that's
it depends on the charge. But
yeah.
It could be anywhere from 10 to 20.
Mm-hmm. I mean, even a day in prison is a day too long in my book. Like, for what? For why? As your kids are growing and they need you there because their mother is now gone, like, now you're not available because you didn't have...
Mom's gone now, and so is dad.
And now we're perpetuating more problems. Like, they had both, now they have nothing because you didn't want to invest in a little tiny safe. It doesn't even have to be a nice one. I needed to travel and I didn't have a TSA approved travel safe. And I was like, oh shoot, where can I get one? There's 30, 40, 50 bucks. There's one for $20. $20.
Just buy it, that's it.
Bro, that's a
$20 saves you 20 years.
At $20 or 20 years, choose. I mean, you could easily spend $20 at your favorite food joint. Like, it's not hard. Just pick something up.
The education part is very important,
Mm-hmm.
Because if the more you train, the more you get educated, the more you realize how much of a high liability this is. Like you said, we don't have the bandwidth to remember everything. So you always assume every firearm is loaded until you've personally cleared that gun and made that gun safe.
Mm-hmm.
These are principles. These principles are created to ensure that we don't have these tragic end results. If you follow these principles, you live by these principles, you will never have any of these unfortunate situations occur.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I mean, here's the thing. When we go back to that picture of the young people in the prom photo, for me, people wanted to make it about race because they were black and they looked like they kind of existed in the hood space, with the
Mhm.
hairstyles which are more
What's in the
emblematic
urban
of the hood.
culture?
It's urban culture stuff, and I
Yeah,
mean that's cool. I don't really care, as in like do your thing, have a good time, as long as it doesn't get in your way. I mean that's do you, man. But the education in regards to guns, that's key. And people were like, oh man, y'all hating on them because they're black. And then they would show other photos of white kids going to prom holding guns and stuff. It's like, no, it's not about that. And maybe for somebody it is. Like, let's be real. For somebody, it is about that. But
right.
for me, like, check the history, man. Like, I'm here for
Definitely.
you to be educated and I care about you. And I'm sure you feel the same way in
I'm the
regards to,
same way, and
yeah.
and I fortunately I got some of that feedback as well, and I'm like, it's about being properly educated, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
about having our people demonstrate that they're properly educated, right? So when other people see that, what are we doing? We're reinforcing proper education. Now, and then some of the pictures that they did put up when they tried to make it about race, I'm like, all right, I'm not making it about race, but when you look at the picture, they are following firearm safety rules. They're not pointing any firearms at, like they're not pointing any firearms at the camera, right? We have our people doing that, and this is where the education and accountability needs to come into play.
No, absolutely. So I would just recommend that anybody who, um, if you have a friend who doesn't quite understand firearms, find somebody who can educate them. And I understand, sometimes you don't have a lot of extra bread to spend like an entire, 100 or $200 to go to a class. Like there are plenty of firearms instructors who are on Instagram who will give you a little bit of free game, and of course, I'm sure they'd love for you to come to a class. Um, just hit them up if you have
Definitely. I'm all
questions.
for that. I've dropped free game to people. I've DM'd people like, hey, bro, I see what you're doing. I know the intent is positive, but hey, this and this, like these principles are here for a reason, boom, boom, boom. And then if I can, sometimes I'll show them, I'll send them something like the negative end result. I'm like, that's not what you want, right?
Mm-mm.
So do this, do that, and you'll be good. Then when you get a chance, take some classes.
This video is brought to you by the merch store. Head over to glockbay.com, check out the category Armed Atlas Merch for the premium t-shirts that we have available for you. Each purchase goes towards making the show better, so definitely go ahead and take a look and see if there's something for you. Okay, Chris, so I know so you're in Florida, and something interesting that's happening in Florida and across the country is this whole constitutional carry, which for the layperson means that in the state, if you are a citizen of that state or a resident rather, because citizen of America, resident of the state, you are able to carry a firearm, generally concealed or unconcealed, depending on I guess their rules of the state, without additional permitting, which generally means without additional classes for said permit. That's been seen as a little bit of a controversial piece between not just firearms instructors at large, but also people who make laws, and generally people who are anti-gun will be like, no, we've got to have at least that. I think some of the good, decent, and even well-meaning firearms instructors are kind of getting swept up and being seen as members of those crowds. And I know you've had opinions on this as well. Can you share what those opinions are?
Definitely. So for me, when it comes to constitutional carry, my thing is based on being that um, I'm an instructor that continuously evaluates use of force, right? I look at these reports, I look at situations that occur, unlike maybe a little bit more than a lot of other instructors. So my perspective on it is this: I am worried, like if we can find a way to still ensure that our gun owners are going to be responsible and educated, then I'm all for that, right? There's a lot of there's a lot of people who do know about basic firearm safety and they're educated and stuff like that. That's fine. But what about the person who doesn't know anything, right? So now this person is in possession of a tool that has the ability to cause great bodily harm or death. And now, with no education, they're going to respond to an escalated, heated situation emotionally and not with the knowledge that they should, right? So that's what I'm concerned about. Mm-hmm. What are we going to do? We have to address that. We have to think about that, because in Florida, there's a lot of things that occur. And unfortunately, Florida makes the news for a lot of things. And it's like,
I mean,
if we just,
I'm looking forward to the day that they catch Florida man, because he's been wrecking havoc.
Definitely. My thing is this: I'm all for it, but we can't just disregard education.
Yeah,
we can't, because people are going to be like, people do this now in Florida. Well, I thought I could do this. Well, you thought wrong, and now you're facing all these criminal charges in addition to civil litigation and some other stuff.
Yeah.
So,
no, that's I think those are important points, and I don't know how much public pushback, because I know you were in the news speaking on it.
Correct.
And giving your take on the situation. And I'm glad you have a chance to kind of flesh out your thoughts a little bit more now. And I'm sure that people will still disagree with you. And I'm sure at some level, I do understand you. And I'm sure if we got really much more into it, I could find a way to disagree with you as well. Just the nature of things. We can always find a way to disagree and still get along. But I'm wondering, how much pushback did you get from the 2A community? Did you hear much at all, or did
so? I had a lot of people.
Okay,
yeah, I had a lot of people like either DM me or a lot of people have my phone numbers. So they called me, and those that called me were the ones who truly don't know me, right? So they know me, but they don't really know me. Mm-hmm. The people within my circle that really know me, they know my stance, they know where I'm coming from. So if there was they knew exactly what I was saying, and they support it, because we still have to have education, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm coming from a data-driven perspective, looking at the numbers, looking at the data. It's saying that we cannot just toss the education.
Sure.
For example.
You said for example.
Oh, for example, we were talking about the 21-year-old father that just got arrested because the mom got killed because the 2-year-old son found the gun. He was 21 years old, no training, right? Because in the state of Florida, he didn't need to have a concealed weapons license. He just needed to be 21 years of age and pass the background. No education, and this was the end result. And it's not the only case. We have a lot of these cases that occur. Mm-hmm. So I'm big on just making sure that we have some way to minimize that.
So, and I know this is getting into the money side of it, and people can be sensitive about such things, where somebody will say, well, Chris, he's just concerned about losing business on the back end of not being able to do the license to carry courses. And I don't know how much of your business revolves around license to carry and how much of it is like voluntary classes and follow-up training and things like that. And others will say, well, you look at states like Arizona, who they, when they did away with their concealed carry process, they continue to have similar numbers in regards to training, because people wanted to learn how to use their firearms. In the past, I've said, instructors need to understand that whether they want it to happen or not, they need to step their game up a little bit and say, like, well, the government's not sending me a meal ticket, to kind of be blunt about it.
Correct.
I need to find ways to market better. And I understand marketing in regards to firearms is extremely difficult on the internet. We need to find ways to mobilize people to get that word of mouth and do different things to make sure that people understand that not only are guns cool, but they're also extremely dangerous, and we need to know how to use it properly. Just because nature of guns, I wouldn't send somebody to sit in the driver's seat of a Lamborghini and drive it down the street without making sure that they could drive a double clutch first. Like,
correct.
It's just not. Yeah. It's not happening. And we've all seen, and I'm not going to go there, but I'm wondering, what do you say to stuff like that? And I know I hit like 6 points, so Take your time.
So I've thought about that too, right? For me, it's, you know what? I've always been very good at telling people and showing them the importance of education. So if that does get passed, right, Constitution, I'm not worried about that because I'm still going to be able to market to people, still going to be able to emotionally and just touch them and show them that you're not properly trained, right? So you need to come out and get some training. And if you don't get training, these are the one of the end result that you can find yourself in. So like we were just talking about, you know, safety, right? You spend $20 on the lock, or you could go to prison for 20 years. It's going to be your call. You have the responsibility is going to be on you and not the state. So when you get involved in something, when you have that firearm, you're assuming that you know what you should be doing and what you shouldn't be doing. So if you aren't properly trained, that's not going to cut it. They're not going to want to hear that. Mm-hmm. You know, so you have a decision to make, right? It's a tool. Let's learn how to utilize this tool. Let's learn how to be effective. Let's be knowledgeable so that we don't end in any type of negligent situation and or in prison, right? We win the violent encounter. We go home. That is the goal. So I have various courses that I offer. So, you know, I'm not too worried about it. I know other instructors who that's all they do. So if that does pass, they're pretty much out of gas. So, you know, you just have to be able to pivot. Things are, you know, going to change. I saw what they did with Georgia, Texas. So I'm like, all right, we're Florida, gunshine state. So at some point, I kind of knew that this was going to happen. Mm-hmm. So it's not just only concealed classes, it's marksmanship classes, tactical classes, night shooting classes, vehicle classes. So you have to broaden your horizon and your training curriculum.
Yeah, I definitely say so. Now, in regards to the thought that people will no longer pursue training, do you feel like there is merit to that? I know you said that you were concerned that maybe that would happen.
Definitely, because, you know, I'm looking at it again from things that I see and how when I analyze the data and just talking to people right now, again, in the state of Florida, you know, if you want to get the concealed license, you have to go through training. If you don't want the concealed license, you're fine. Unfortunately, you know, a lot of these people that don't have the license, right, they're the ones that tend to find themselves in a lot more hot water than those who have at least taken a concealed class, because they at least know, all right, for the most part, they have a good understanding of proper deadly force, right? I can't do this. I can do this. I can't do this. I can do this. Those who don't have any type of training, don't know about basic firearm safety, those are the ones that tend to find themselves in some stuff, right? Mm-hmm. So I think there is some valid merit to it, that some people are just going to be like, well, I don't have to spend the money, right? Because I get that too. A lot of people will complain about spending the money. I'm like, so you don't complain about your $300-$400 sneakers, $600 belt, but you're complaining about learning how to use this tool to be able to protect yourself and your loved ones if you're involved in a violent encounter.
Yeah, no, it's definitely
priorities.
That's definitely a sticking point. You're making good points in regards to that, and I'm sure I'm missing a point, and one of my guys is going to be like, "You need to ask him about this, cause he's a sellout and a coward," and you know,
yeah.
Like
I'm you know, I don't let that get to me. You know, I'm focused on teaching people how to be knowledgeable, how to win violent encounters. That's key, and then pass that on to others.
Do you feel like there's any sort of consequence that maybe your words kind of going on television and having that impromptu, I don't know how impromptu it was, but that quick interview?
It was impromptu.
Okay. So having those impromptu, you know, that impromptu conversation, do you feel like maybe your words might be used against the firearms community and be like, see, like even people who are involved in it, and this guy, he's expert witness, he's this and he's that, you know, run the credentials. He's saying that gun owners need training. So we're just not going to, you know, somebody maybe at a federal level maybe would try to craft laws, maybe not based on your word alone, but words like yours.
Yeah. You know, at any time you do any type of interview, things can be misconstrued, right? Mm. Like when I did the interview, all the questions, everything that we talked about, the things that I spoke about in depth, that wasn't there. It was about this, and that. And I get that. And I know the intent wasn't to be malicious.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know the intent wasn't to be malicious, right? But those that know me know where I stand. And I think anyone who supports 2A, you can't just dismiss education. That is a vital part,
Right.
right? What are the principles, the basic firearm safety rules, right? That is education, right? So if we just say that, all right, we just toss that to the side, I think we can, say that there are going to be some situations that occur that if a person was properly educated, they would not have done this. So we have to say that that's going to happen. It's not going to be the majority, but that will happen. And those few situations that do occur can tragically hurt the 2A community.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree in the sense that you do have to be, I guess, mindful that the lack of education has consequences. And even people who have taken a concealed carry course or have an abundant amount of education. I know someone personally who got into a little bit of hot water, nothing too crazy, just it was a domestic situation and the firearm was not fully involved, but it was in the general vicinity. And when the police were called, there was a question of like, why was the firearm even basically involved in the situation, and was this person even truly a threat to you, and things like that. And I won't get into too much detail just for the sake of their privacy. But this guy, I know he's been around the firearms community for a long time. He knows what he's doing.
And we're human,
right?
We're human.
Mm-hmm.
Things can happen.
Well, imagine what would happen if he had even less education, because he maybe, and a lot of us choose this lifestyle. We choose to make guns a part of our religion per se, but it's just kind of interesting that some people, the only education they get is a quick YouTube video on how to clean their gun, or maybe they don't even know that much. They come to the range and their gun is screeching to high heavens because it's never been oiled. But
correct. They've gone or people that I've gotten people, they had their gun for like 8-9 years. It's just been sitting there, never been cleaned, and no type of lubricant or anything. And they think that's okay. So yeah.
Yeah. But it's almost like, man, okay, so shifting gears, I wonder if there's a way to reach the young people. The guy was 21. He was 21. And who's to say he never took at least a concealed carry course? Not all the information in the world can be delivered in a concealed carry course. It's not, it's not a month. It's a few hours. Some places it's 4 hours. Some places it's less.
Some places an hour. Like in Florida, some of these guys, they do it within an hour.
Mm-hmm. Like in Virginia, I think it was maybe 2 hours at the most. No range time, which, it's fine for me because I could shoot, but there's a lot of people who can't shoot at all. Like they can't hit paper. In fact, previous interview I did, there was a guy saying he was going to an instructor course where people were applying to become an instructor, and the girl next to him couldn't hit paper, which is insane. That's insane to me.
I've seen it in instructor courses. I've seen it in law enforcement courses. I just came from one a couple of days ago, and I was like, what the heck? But it goes back to training. That's why 58% of officers, when they're involved in shootings, they can't shoot. 30 shots fired, suspect hit once.
That's horrible. And I'm not advocating for more people to get hit by bullets from the police, but if there is a situation where it is justified and kind of like the right thing, as far as things go, why are there stray bullets not even touching the target? What's that? Why?
See, so it goes back to training, right? It's not just on law enforcement. It's just people. Sometimes people don't see the need to really train. How are you coming out to be an instructor and you're not demonstrating the basic fundamentals, right?
Right.
Of marksmanship. That's scary.
Yeah, I'm genuinely, that's a scary thing for me, because I'm like, what can you teach somebody if you cannot shoot at all. And I know there's like the textbook stuff. Like I can say, well, you grip the gun like this, but like, how do you help somebody correct what's wrong if you don't even know how to correct yourself?
Correct.
So,
And how do you articulate it, right? Everyone has their own learning style. How do you identify what that person's learning style is and then relay that information to them, right?
Right. Because in essence, a firearms instructor is a teacher of sorts.
We're educators.
Educators. And, we have a lot of respect for, people in the education system teaching the youth. And I wonder if there's a role for guys like you, firearms educators, firearms instructors to teach specifically the youth. And in the past, I know a guy who he said that he doesn't teach kids about use of force because that's not necessarily, he doesn't believe that's necessarily something that they should get into. They could,
right.
Teach them about safety and fundamentals.
I think kids, depending on the age, right? For me, I do the youth class, right? The youngest child that I had on the range was 4 years old, and he actually shot live. 4 years old, he shot. He was very excited. Yeah, he shot. He did a whole mag.
What was the
he
caliber?
did he was shooting a Glock 44, so 22 long rifle.
Yeah.
So I had him shoot that. He was excited. It's important to educate our kids because they're coming across guns when we're not there, right? When the adults are not there. And they need to know what to do and what not to do, right? If you have one child that knows firearm safety, that understands what to do, what not to do, that one child can possibly prevent a very unfortunate ending that can lead to great bodily harm or death.
No, that's absolutely true.
They should understand that. They should be taught that. In school, we were taught, fire drills. What do we do? Stop, drop, and roll. In the country that has the most amount of guns, we should be teaching our youth, especially, in the urban community. Kids are coming across guns, they don't know what to do. And unfortunately, curiosity is killing the cat. Let's properly educate them so they know what to do. So now that if something happens, they can take control and we can prevent something bad from happening.
Yeah, absolutely. And it kind of kills me a little inside every single time I read headline article, 5-year-old shoots 2-year-old, 2-year-old shoots 10-year-old. Like, why? And it goes back to a couple different things, but I think the root cause of it all is education. They can take everything from you, but they can't take your education.
Invest in it. You're not. People need to understand they're not wasting their money investing. You're protecting yourself. You're protecting your family. You're protecting the rest of the community, right? Mm-hmm. Because the more knowledgeable you are, the more you know how to move, the more you know what to do, what not to do. And then guess what? You become a force multiplier. As far as the knowledge that I have, now you can pass it on to your kids. You can pass it on to your other loved ones inside the home. And guess what? We just keep passing on that knowledge, and we're a family of knowledgeable, responsible gun owners. Right?
Yeah, no, that's powerful. And I see there's a certain attitude that I would say minority gun owners or even like Black American gun owners have about firearms. And there's I'm sure there's a million things we could get into with that. But one thing that we look at with that is we see others, we see the typical American gun owner, and we're like, oh man, they're teaching their kids from the age of 4. And, I touched a gun when I was 40 for the first time. I'm like, yeah, well, get on it. Like, don't complain because other people have it ingrained in their family unit. It's family by family. There's clearly going to be people who have never touched a gun their entire life. But
correct.
Like, get on it. Invest in some education.
I think it's part of trauma and experiences, right? Within the Black community, right? Like, I wanted to get involved in guns a long time ago. My mom said no. Why? Because you're Black. That was the thing. You're Black, and I don't want I don't want anything happening to you. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of shunned upon, right? No, don't get involved in guns. But we should be doing the opposite. We should be properly educating our kids, our youth, so they know what to do, right? Like all my white friends, Paw was showing them what to do when they were 4 years old.
Right.
So by the time these guys were 6, 7 years old, man, these guys were handling guns, firearm safety, no issues. They could be left alone with guns because they knew what to do. They were properly trained and groomed. And we should be doing the same. Right now, there's a push. A lot of us are doing that, right? Mm-hmm. But then on the flip side, there's still people who are hesitant and say, no, that doesn't apply to us.
Right. It's strange. Especially if you really do believe in the empowerment of the melanated people.
Correct.
Why would you not give them every tool available to protect and, to first of all, to build and then to protect what you build?
Correct.
Like what you have means nothing if you can't back it up or protect it, and people, they go down the line of history and they see, there's been all sorts of crazy stuff that have happened, and people still fail to realize, like, hey, it is in your best interest not to fight anybody or do anything, but to protect yourself and your family from any immediate threat. Why would you not have the best tool?
Correct. So you just said something, and I'm gonna add to that. For example, churches, right? Yeah. We've seen the attacks, right? But for some reason, a lot of churches still don't believe that they need to be investing in firearms training or getting security or their members carrying, and that's only within our community.
Right, because my church is right now, it's majority white, and they got a pretty good security team. They got
and I bet you the pastor,
all the ammo.
Pistol packing pastor. Everybody's packing, But when we look at our community, like our churches, it's no, we're not doing that. You know how many times I'll talk to some pastors and I'm like, look, because when we do risk assessments, or some people will come in and train with me and say, hey, you might need to come talk to my pastor because we need to do this, we need to do that, or we had this situation, go talk. And they just don't believe in it. And I'm like, all right, you're already a soft target. Now you're really just setting our people up just to be targets, right? There's no way that you are taking the responsibility seriously to ensure that your people are being protected.
Wow. Yeah. So, ultimately, at the end of the day, education. It's coming back to education. We gotta educate people. We actually do need to take action in regards to hardening soft targets like churches and places of worship, and for people who are phobic of guns. Get around an instructor, somebody who can actually teach you, because I wouldn't just be like, hey, Uncle so and so, he has a gun, he can show me, and then he puts you in front of behind his 45, and you see what happens then. I'm not saying a 45 will kill you. It's just maybe not the most pleasant experience when you've never shot a gun before.
And also, as instructors and educators, those who really take this seriously, invest into the craft, are very good at identifying those who've had some sort of traumatic experience. So being able to see that, now that person is going to need a little bit more training versus someone else, right? So when I get people out on the range, I start seeing some cues, right? And then through those cues, I'm like, all right, I'll pull that person aside, ask them some questions. And then that's when they say, yeah, you know what? My brother got killed, or this would happen. And so shooting a gun or hearing those shots go off, it takes them back to that traumatic experience. So now you have to do a little bit of counseling to make sure that they're good to go. You have to empower them. You have to make sure that they're confident. It's just, it's a lot that goes into it.
It's interesting. I know Marshall or Tig from My
Correct.
Sister's Keeper. And when she came on the show, she actually said, like, for her, she mainly teaches women, mainly. That's kind of what she's known for. And if she has a lady out there who it's very difficult for them, she doesn't force them to shoot.
Yeah.
Which, I guess maybe in my younger days, maybe I would have thought, like, yeah, like, let them get through it. Let them get a few rounds off and they'll get through it, which maybe that's not the best option for them.
Yeah. I've had a few people. I had one client, her brother was murdered. So like, as soon as that first shot went off, we were like, all right, took her off the line. She was crying. And ironically, it was a class where, because I do a class where every so often I have a mental health therapist that's there, and we address any type of trauma related issues.
That's really interesting.
So
I didn't know
so he
that.
was, yeah, I do that. I do that every couple of, I have that class about 3 or 4 times a year, where I work with a nonprofit organization called No Limit Health and Education, with my brother Pernell Bush, mental health therapist. So he was actually there, and we took her off the line, spoke to her, had the other instructor work the line, and then once everything was said and done, we already called it. We said, all right, you know what, you can sit out and then finish up the rest of the class, until she made the decision. She said, you know what, I want to overcome this and I want to go up on the line. Wow. So, and the only way she wanted to do it was, she was like, I need to be the only person on the line. So everyone ran through their course of fire. Then we brought her back up. Myself and him, we were there talking to her, guiding her, encouraging her, and she was able to complete that course. And then next thing you know, it, boom, jumps into a marksmanship class, boom, buys the gun, boom, and she is on it. Wow. So I've learned you can't push that person. It has to be that person's call. Definitely. And that's where a good educator / instructor comes into play, because other people that I know, they've gone with their uncle, boyfriend, husband, or whatever, and they tell them, hey, just face the fear and then just shoot. You might be causing more trauma than good. So, yeah.
Wow. Okay, man. I very much appreciate this. I feel like we may need to do a follow-up. Guys, if you have enjoyed this so far, this one's going to be on YouTube. If you're listening on podcast, shoot me a DM. Let me know that you want to get Chris back on the show. If you're a Twitter person, find me on Twitter. But also comment down below if you're watching YouTube and let us know, do you want to hear more from Chris? Because Chris actually has a whole lot to share, even more than this cornucopia of information, really focused around education. There's quite a few things that he could really get into, and I'm annoyed that we don't have 6 hours to just keep talking. Yeah, there's a lot.
We'll get to it. Thank you for having me on. I greatly appreciate it.
How can people find you?
They can find me on Instagram, FTAC.training, Facebook, FTAC Security Solutions and Training. And any questions, concerns, if you're out in Central Florida, feel free to reach out. Private outdoor gun range. We do various classes for civilians and law enforcement, so let's train.
Yeah, man, guys, reach out, let them know that you enjoyed the conversation, or if you had a disagreement,
definitely let us know.
Out.
Let us know.
Leave a comment down below, reach out. He's accessible. Come on. He's not some sort of, he's not Will Smith.
I'm a humble man. I'm a humble working man.
Yeah. Chris, thank you so much for coming on the show, guys. And until next time, keep it costly.